let's get into this Thomas Massie stuff where he put out Massie actually retweeted this ad that he, I guess, came across or somebody had sent him from, I believe, Twitter. Yeah, and sponsored by APAC, which is, the main Israel lobby in the United States. They donate money to politicians and they run these hit pieces. And this one says, efforts to cut ag conditions or restrict America's strong bipartisan commitment to Israel will only harm America's national interests. And it's, the actual meme itself says, when Israel faced rocket attacks, Thomas Massie voted against the Iron Dome. And then they want you to sign a little thing that says that you stand with Israel and Thomas Massie does not speak for me. And then, of course, on his tweet, Thomas Massie puts, how is this not foreign interference in our elections? Which I think is a pretty fair point, or some people did point out that is, true too, that, is the American Israel Political Action Committee. And so, there is an American part to this, but it is promoting, it promotes the general welfare of Israel. It's talking about a country that's trillions of dollars in debt, needed to send, me and Will broke this down on Monday's show, by the way. This is, we broke it down, the AOC segment where she voted present on this House bill that authorized $1 billion in aid to Israel for their Iron Dome. And, by voting president, she refused to vote against it. And the only Republican no vote was Thomas Massie. And so this is what he's taking the heat for. Now, this is really important. And, we've made the point time and time again. But, they come up with names like Iron Dome, and they say that these are defensive, that stops Hamas rockets. But this is a situation where Israel is, this is acknowledged by the Human Rights Watch, a major American international, I think it's American New York based international human rights group, right? They say that Israel is an apartheid state, right? This isn't like Kyle Anzalone just reading some Palestinian media and agreeing that, the Israelis must be doing bad things or anything like that. I'm, talking about major groups that have now said this, and also what I've been able to observe and read in the, the way that Palestinians are treated, the conditions of Gaza, the way that, if one rocket or incendiary balloon, which is just like a balloon that has some kind of flaming device attached to it, flies over the border and starts a brush fire, Israel comes with, an advanced American aircraft and drops a couple 500-pound bombs on Gaza. There's just massive disparities here in what's going on. When you look at, the living conditions and, just the number of Palestinian protesters that are shot at the border with Gaza, you understand that there really isn't any way to support Israel in self-defense because it is actively oppressing the Palestinians. You just can't do it. And so by any way voting to give more military aid to Israel, you are supporting that occupation. And Thomas Massie bravely stood against it, voted no on that, was the lone Republican no vote, which is, the one of the most important things is to have the votes coming on both sides of the aisle. Now, I do want to just clarify that, gotta give some praise here, particularly to Reps Omar and Tlaib, who take additional heat on this because Tlaib has Palestinian ancestry, and of course Representative Omar is, a Muslim woman that regularly, covers her hair and will wear a hijab or something like this. And so, being very publicly Muslim and to take votes against Israel is going to, get you criticism because of that. They bravely stand up here. Cori Bush, who's newly elected, I think from St. Louis City, actually, she's been pretty good on the Palestine issue and actually can articulate it well. And then we also have Carson Newman, Ayanna Presley, Garcia, and Grilhana. I'm not quite sure what rep that is. And then, of course, Thomas Massie with Representative Hank Johnson and AOC voting present. So, again, just want to give major credit to all of those people who took a vote that's getting them targeted. I mean, I'll most people listen to the show, but for those of you watching, antisemitism.org listed Thomas Massie as their anti-Semite of the week. They took the worst picture they could find of Thomas Massie, which really isn't that bad. He's just trying to tell some government bureaucrat how terrible they are. But they take that picture and they put a big red caption that says Jew hater on it. Right, that's the kind of thing that they're going to do when again, he's just not willing to give Israel more aid to carry out their oppression on the Palestinians. And from his perspective, I'm sure a lot of it is just the fact that the U.S. is trillions of dollars in debt itself. Israel is a fairly wealthy country that provides a lot of services, including like general universal healthcare and education to their citizens. And so it really doesn't make sense that the U.S. would have to give this country $1 billion in aid. I mean, look, if you're that concerned, then you have to what? Cut the amount of healthcare or education you're giving. You ask your citizens to pay a little bit more or something like that. But they say that this is an example of him being an anti-Semite, and they use this opportunity to label him a Jew hater. And that's why AOC is so cowardly by not voting for it. This is a woman that when she takes a vote, and she, because of the stance and the way American politics work, if you are accused of attacking a marginalized community, but you're on the same side as AOC, that's pretty good cover for doing it. You know what I mean? It lets you take those votes and those political stands and say, no, look, obviously everyone, this isn't because I dislike Jews or anything like that. AOC is very in touch with marginalized communities, and she's obviously not someone that would ever, deliberately, do anything anti-Semitic. And me and her are in agreement on this position, and it has nothing to do with that at all. It's because of A, B, and C. But when, she's only voting present, then that even, will give them more cover. Look, it's Thomas Massie and the Muslim woman of the House that are voting against this thing. So it's very disgusting the way that they have been targeted. And just wanted to say that these people are absolutely heroic and doing the right thing. And so want to talk about a couple other issues with Israel and the U.S. The first is that Florida is one of the countries with anti-BDS laws. In fact, one of the things that the antisemitism.org or whatever the hell it is, the people that called Thomas Massie the anti-Jew of the week or the anti-Semite of the week, so one of the things they labeled him for that is because he doesn't support anti-BDS laws. BDS is boycott, divestment, and sanctions, and this is a group that calls for the advocating boycotting Israel, divesting, so taking investments out of the West Bank or the Israeli government, and then sanctioning Israel. I personally have always been clear that I don't support the sanctions. At the same time, if somebody is advocating sanctions against Israel in the U.S., that is free speech. That is something that they're able to do, and so by targeting any company that chooses to boycott Israel, this is freedom of speech, right? But yet we have passed laws in the United States that say you cannot boycott Israel, and if you do that, you can't contract with state governments or state governments that companies that are put on lists by state governments that are not sufficiently pro-Israel, or again, like you have Ben & Jerry's in this case, who has only refused to sell ice cream in the occupied West Bank when the contract is up in like a year and a half. At the time, I wasn't even all that impressed by the Ben & Jerry's move, to be quite honest. Again, I should always say that one of the founders of Ben & Jerry's, Ben Cohen, has donated to antiwar.com, where I am currently employed, or I'm a contract worker. And anyways, but just to say real quick here that they passed laws to say that because Ben and Jerry's is now not loyal enough to Israel, they can't, the state of Florida won't invest in them. So Florida is divesting 139 million because of this, but Florida isn't alone, and they're divesting not in Ben and Jerry's. It's the parent company Unilever that owns it. New Jersey is also divesting. I'm not quite sure how much. I'm not. Dave DeCamp says 182 million that they will be divesting. Also, Arizona is divesting 143 million, and Texas is the last to join the list, and they're divesting about $100 million from Unilever. So this is a somewhat bold stance to take, even again, if I don't think the actual move itself, just not selling ice cream in the West Bank, was all the occupied West Bank settlements was all that significant. But at the same time, the reaction to it has is going to cause about 150 or so $1 million, maybe a little bit 600 million, 500, 600 million worth of Unilever's stock to be put on the market, which will probably hurt and cost them a little bit of money.